if we look at ourselves as human beings, our original settings from the moment we get squirted out from our mom is crying, laughing, sleeping, but laughing is in there. It's just in you. You ever seen a little baby laugh and you're like, oh my God, they can't even see yet. And they're laughing. So for me, getting the opportunity to say words to people that I've never met, and we share this primal, like when there was cavemen, they had to have been laughing.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy and life with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Today's guest is a fast thinker, he's deep, and a great storyteller. Joe has this incredible mindset about improving and growing his craft. I love it. It was also so awesome to hear a little how Joe gave up being a musician to be a comedian later in life. It's rare, it takes guts, and his story and lessons are brilliant. It's not often you hear someone make such a huge career change, especially when they've already built a life around something else and achieved success and recognition. And Joe's story, his mindset, and the lessons he's picked up along the way are genuinely fascinating. I love this chat, and I think you will too. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Joe Sibb's career began in music as a singer before evolving into stand-up comedy and storytelling, where he became known for blending humor with deeply personal and relatable stories. He's released comedy specials with Dry Bar Comedy and 800 Pound Gorilla, made numerous television appearances, and toured internationally, including arena performances as part of the opening act for Metallica with Jim Bruer. Beyond stand-up, Joe co-founded the independent record label SideOneDummy Records, helping launch the careers of influential punk and alternative artists. Today, it is his ability to connect through storytelling that defines his work on stage. Also, if you're in Edinburgh, his shows are out now. Check them out. Links are in the episode notes. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about leaving music to become a comedian later in life, touring with Jim Bruer and Metallica, reinvention, being a magician and his love of Houdini, knowing how to get backstage, taught by his father, delusion, being fully present on stage, social media and addictions, the importance of fun, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, I'd love it if you would share the podcast around, like, comment, subscribe, tell a mate, write a nice review. It really helps the podcast grow and helps ensure I can lock in amazing guests like this one. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. Let's get into it. Let's see. I've got like literally 10 places we could start, but I think we'll just start kind of from the beginning. And I'd love to know, I believe you were a magician. Can you tell me about where your love of magic came from and how helped?
Yeah. I mean, for me, as a kid growing up, magic was the first form of entertainment I ever was into. My mom and dad, there was a movie with an old actor. You know, he's been gone for so long. This guy named Tony Curtis, and there was this movie called Houdini. And we're talking a long time ago, and I was a very, very young kid. And the first time that I sat down and watched this movie called Houdini, I immediately was drawn into the Houdini. And I was drawn into him because he was, you know, the way that Houdini always was portrayed as an escape artist. And there was this energy around him that he was out of this world. And literally, you know, when he passed away, he said his final trick was going to be coming back and being able to speak to his wife. You know, so on every Halloween, she always would have a seance. And there was a lot of, you know, the energy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the energy surrounding Houdini. I connected to it because not that it was dark and evil or anything like that, but it definitely had the same energy of later on when I was a kid growing up and I got into music. When I got into, my whole background was punk rock. And I think one of the reasons I was drawn to danger and that type of energy of not knowing what's going to happen, and this is out of this world, literally, was because of my love for magic. And it also, when I got into magic as a kid,
Cool.
there was no one doing magic. There wasn't like, it wasn't something that you met other kids that were doing magic. And my dad and I every week would sit down, and he'd work all week, and he'd come home, and we'd sit down a lot of times after dinner with a different book, and we would work on a new trick together, whether it was
That's
a card
amazing.
trick. Yeah. Whether it was a card trick, whether it was a sleight of hand trick. And what I loved about that at that time was you were constantly making your list of tricks bigger and bigger. Like at first you might start out with a trick, there was this trick that everyone kind of learned that was 3 cups and these 3 balls that go on top. So it's a sleight of hand trick. Very, very, very amateur. But when you first master that and you start learning it, then you're like, okay, after that trick's done, what would be the next trick we go into? So then maybe you do a card trick. And then because of just who I am as a kid at that time, I had to get into escapes. Like I used to literally I had these handcuffs, and they would handcuff me and put me in this cardboard box, and I would escape from the handcuffs in the cardboard box. That was my finale. That was my closer.
Nice.
And I worked on these tricks all the time. And at the time, my parents, they lived on a ranch, and we had a horse ranch. It was in the Santa Cruz Mountains, redwood trees everywhere. And my parents had people over all the time. They always were entertaining. People were coming to the house to ride their horses. And after they'd ride their horses, it always would turn into like a barbecue or just some sort of party. And at some point during the party, my dad and my mom would always be like, Joey, why don't you do some magic? Why don't you do a magic show? And I never hesitated at the opportunity to perform. I loved getting in front of people as a kid, and I would come out and I would do my magic tricks. And I really believe that magic, I didn't continue going on with magic. Like, right around 6th grade, 7th grade, I always joke around that right around when I discovered girls and skateboarding and punk rock music and rock and roll, that basically I stopped being the magician, because at that point, you're older. I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and there's a moment where I had to make that decision, like, hey, am I going to put away the scarves and the tricks? Because if I don't, it's going to be a different type of upbringing, because no one was into it. But I credit magic. And when I say I credit magic, because sometimes when I talk about it, I'll meet up with different performers that are magicians, and they'll say, hey, I heard, I listened to you and you talk about being a magician on stage. And when I say I was a magician, that's a very loose term, but I mean, there was a time in my life where I would consider myself a magician. I mean, I performed all over my hometown, and it was something that my dad and I did regularly and really worked on it. And I loved it. And I give a lot of credit to getting on stage. Because the first time I ever was on stage, I was 10 years old, and I performed at a pizza parlor in my neighborhood, and they paid us with free pizza and drinks. And that was the first time I remember even my mom and dad were both like, whoa, we just got a free dinner out of him doing magic shows. And I loved that. Wow, like I provided something. I did something today. And going there, and then you come back the next week, and the people, hey, we saw your act last week. Oh, wow, when are you coming back? And at a young age, I already got bit by that I always say, either this lifestyle of being a comedian, being a magician, being a musician. I've been doing all of that for since I was 10 years old, and I'll be 59 this week. So I have been on stage the better part of my life. I've been on stage way more than I haven't been. There's only 10 years that I wasn't. So it's just really been a part of my life so much. And I credit it all to when I got bit by that. I want to get on stage through magic, and ultimately through having just this deep love for Houdini. Houdini to me was, when I was a kid, like even when I talk about him right now, I mean, he was like the original rock star to me. Yeah. Like that was the guy.
That is so crazy. Also, were your parents like, oh, I really like this steak place, you should go and perform there so you could just get on?
Well, it's funny. It's funny is my dad was a huge sports fan. And what we have over here is every year they have an East-West Shrine football game. And what it is it's all the top players from all of the universities in America. So imagine, you have the top guy from Michigan, the top guy from, USC, the top guy from USA and UCLA, and they play one football game. I'm pretty sure it still
Whoa.
happens, but back then it was the East versus the West Shrine football game. And, they would do it in these huge stadiums. And one year, I was performing, and this is like straight up out of a movie. I got asked to perform after a puppet show at a petting zoo. So there was a petting zoo in San Jose with all these little animals. There's all these miniature animals, and they had a small, almost like a stage, this area that was this miniature area where they had seating that was in a circle, and then in the middle of this was an area they had a puppet show, Michael. And I'm watching the puppet show with my dad because we just went, to the petting zoo, and I say to my dad, this would be a great place for a magic show. And what I loved about my dad, he didn't, a lot of parents would be like, oh, well, that's never going to happen. My dad said, well, what do you think we should do? And I said, I don't know. He said, maybe let's wait to the end of the puppet show, and then let's try to get backstage and ask them and let them know. Let them know that you're a magician. Let them know that you've performed here, that you've performed there, and maybe they'll let you do magic. And sure enough, after the show, like I said, I'm probably 11 years old. We walk back there, we figure out how to get backstage, and we find the person that's in charge. And I pitched them on doing a magic show. And not only did we get to do the magic show there, but instead of paying us, they gave us tickets to the East-West Shrine football game. And I remember I went with my dad, and he was like, Joey, like this, like we've made it. Like, this is it. Like, we're going, we're sitting in great seats. We're watching one of the biggest games of the year, all the top players. And we're there because of the tricks that we learned in our kitchen.
That's crazy. And as you said before, to be able to give back to your dad as well.
Oh, it was the best.
Did this plant the seed that this could be your career, something in adjacent or something like this as a performer? Or like what happens during school? Because I don't think student, according to you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, after magic went away and I didn't stop, it was replaced really quickly with skateboarding and replaced with punk rock. And for me, music and skateboarding, they were my passions from the time I was in 7th grade, all through high school, all through college. It was just music. It was all about, and skateboarding. That was, to the point that my dad didn't even come to my high school graduation because he was like, no, it's true. He did not come to my high school graduation because he said, I've never seen you carry a book to and from school. All you've done, is carry your skateboard. I don't know how the only thing I will give it to you is that you figured out how to, beat the system, but I won't participate in this. He goes, the reason these schools are in trouble is because they're just pushing kids like you through because they don't want to deal with you anymore. And, I graduated, ultimately I ended up going to college, and, I graduated, which whenever I talk about that, my dad always will be like, don't forget to tell people you graduated. Cause that's like she's very proud of that.
Like
but
view of success or something.
Yeah. Like yeah. But for me, magic was just really the foundation for building what later would become the stage for me as a singer, what later would come for me as the stage as a comedian. And nice. And I really feel like when I look back on it, I do see a lot of similarities. I mean, it's all similar in the same sense of, whether being a magician, whether it be singer in a band, whether being a comedian. I mean, when you're a magician, you're by yourself. When you're in a band, you have your other, you have your 3 friends, your 4 friends. When you're doing comedy, you're by yourself. There's similarities. At the end of the day, it's all about, are there people in front of the stage and how are you going to entertain them? And that to me has always been the draw. That's always been the thing that's been the most exciting, even to this day, that I still love.
That's amazing to you. I want to hear about the journey because it's crazy. But when your dad is like, I'm not going to go, was that like a badge of honor? Was it a hard pill to swallow? Or did you not?
No, not at all. No, because the thing that I haven't told you is that my dad, he's been the dean of, he was the dean of arts and science at Santa Clara University. He was at St. Mary's College out here in California. At one point, he was at the Chicago Art Institute. what I'm trying to get across is that my dad is one of the most smartest, educated men. He's still, even now at this point in his career, he was at the Higher Learning Institute in San Francisco, where like Timothy Leary taught. So my dad's whole life has been education, the pursuit of better education. His whole life's been about making sure everyone can get education. So all of a sudden he has me as his son, and it was such a soul polishing moment for him, because this poor, yeah, it was just so like, and I sometimes say to my dad, I just say to him sometimes while we're having breakfast, because we have breakfast once a week together. I'm talking to him, and I say to him still, Dad, just want to thank you so much for not just punching me in the face constantly, because you had every right to. I was so not into or interested in anything of value that he was. Like, his life was books, his life was writers, his life was authors, his life, and I was, all that I cared about was Black Flag, and if I could go see Bad Religion play at the On Broadway. Like, this poor guy. But the thing about my dad, he never, he just accepted it. I think there was a lot of irony to it. And I think what he understood quickly is your kids, whether it's your daughter, whether it's your son, they're never ever gonna be what you thought they were gonna be. Like my son, and my daughter, like, they're both so extremely just, they're talented. Like, my daughter's this great director, and she's a photographer, and she can write. And some of the times I see the stuff that she does, and I'm like, I can't even get my head around it, because I'm like, wow, she just directed this new video from this really cool up and coming artist, this kid named Roman. And then my son, Nate, Sib, he goes by Nate Sib. I just went and saw him in Salt Lake City, and he's on tour with another artist named Joe G. And they just, he just opened up in front of, 15,000 kids, and it's just him on stage. And I watch him get behind the piano. So, in my case, my kids ended up just going down this road, but not like I can't play the piano. I can't write like my daughter. I can't take, video. Like, I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I think the same thing was for my dad, in the sense that he was super talented, but I was talented in music. And I was and obviously, when I started getting into stand up, and he just, and then also, when I think I always had when I started the record company SideOneDummy, which I ran, for 30 years, that was kind of a combination of all those worlds coming together. It was a combination of being a singer in a band. It was the combination of managing bands. It was the combination of signing bands. It was the combination of working in a DUI a DUI atmosphere, and or do it your DUI is driving under the influence.
You can do both of that,
which I don't want to have. Yeah, I never got one of those. Knock on wood. But yeah, so I just think for, to answer your question, like, when he didn't come to my high school graduation, of course he wasn't going to come. I don't blame him for not coming, because it was such a farce that I even graduated. And it'd be the equivalent of someone, loving education so much, and then someone like me just, gets pushed through. So that was that. But it was never like, I never was disappointed that he didn't come.
Nice.
I totally understood why. I think I respected him more because he didn't come.
Well, your father sounds like a brilliant man. He's to blame, because he planted the seed when you were reading the books and going over all the magician tricks and all that stuff. That was his way of doing it. He planted
It really
the seed.
was.
You just went in a different direction.
It really was. I mean, him and I, that was the thing. I mean, if it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't have seen Doug Henning when I was a kid. Famous magician, one of the best to ever do it. He unfortunately, passed away way too young, but I got to see him in his prime because of my dad. My dad also, as much as my dad is, and was in education and was this professor, I can't paint him that way, because he was also the guy that taught me how to sneak backstage. He was also the guy. Yeah. I mean, I have been able to go so many places that I shouldn't be able to, because my dad taught me the best um, gift of all was just act like you belong there and no one will ask any questions. And if someone does, just go, oh, I didn't know I could be not back here. Thank you, and leave. And that was the best uh, piece of advice. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was my dad. I to this day, I've met so many different people, whether it's musicians or comedians or just great people, because um, being able to know how to be backstage in an atmosphere and how to, carry yourself that no one questions it.
It also will carry on to life as well. Like whether you on stage, oh, hi guys, I'm going to do some
Yeah.
comedy. People sense that. But if you just go up there and go, hi, I'm Joe, let's
Yeah.
do this. People
Yeah.
sense that. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think, I always kid around. I feel more comfortable, I think, when I got a mic in my hand in front of people than when I don't. Because at that moment, I don't like, when I'm on stage, and it's been this way since I was a little kid, there's almost like a time lapse that it's the one moment that, they always say when you meditate, like I try to meditate and, it'll last a second because I can't quiet my mind. I can't quiet those, million thoughts that I have going on. But when I'm on stage, it's the only time in that day, it's the only time in my life that those thoughts and those, your mind racing finally is quieted, because I'm so focused on the show. I'm so dropped into that moment. So when someone says, hey, you have to live in the moment, I would say I'll go about the whole day, on this planet, the 15, 16 hours that I'm awake, and the only time that I truly am 100% in the moment is the moment when I get on stage to do my stand up. And for that hour, um, I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about the mortgage. I'm not thinking about, oh, I got to get a flight. Oh, I got to book a gig. Oh, I got to write. I'm just thinking about right there, and
Wow.
that is the true time that I'm in that moment. And that to me says a lot, because I really do try to be in the moment off a stage, and it's virtually impossible.
That's very interesting. Were you always like that, whether it was skating or when you're in a band? Is it just the concept of you going on stage and you have to perform, you're one with your craft? Or has comedy got taken you to a new level?
No, I would say the only time that I've ever been in the moment would be the only time I've ever been in the moment is on stage and during sex. But even during sex, I think I've drifted off sometimes. I think everybody has had a moment where you're like, okay, when I'm done with this, I'm going to make a sandwich. Like but I can honestly say that when I've been on stage, whether it was in my band or whether it was doing stand up, especially with stand up, because it's just you, um, it's been such a moment where and I only realized that later in life. Like when I was younger, I used to think, oh, if I get on stage and then we're done, and because there's a lot of times when you're on stage and you're on stage where you look down at at the phone, or when you're in a band, you look up and you're like, how long have we been up here? And those are shows that are generally not good because you're not in the moment, and you suddenly realize, oh God, we still got 3 more songs. It feels like we've been up here forever. They're not really feeling us. Only later on in my life, in my adult life, when people started, the concept, you need to be in the moment, you need to slow down, you need to quiet the voices, you need to quiet the wheels. I didn't realize, as much as I tried meditating, as much as I tried calming, as much as I tried the journaling, everything that everyone said, I remember asking a friend of mine that taught in all of that, like meditation and wellness and all that. And I said, well, what do you, I don't even understand what I'm trying, like what's the feeling I'm going to have? And they said, well, when you're truly in the moment, you'll only be thinking about what's happening. And I couldn't even imagine that. And then one day I realized, oh my gosh, every time I'm on stage, it's the only time that I've been that in the moment ever.
What led you to, try meditation and meet these people? Were you very loud? What was going on at
Yeah, I mean,
the
I
time?
think for me, as everyone, as you get older, you, I think everybody especially now, the world that we're living in, we have our phones, we have our kids, we have our relationships, we have our friends, and you're getting hit with a barrage of everything. I think the phone brings in a whole other element of
Definitely.
it brings in this element of like, well, am I doing enough, and should I be doing this, and that's this person's there, and like even people watching this, oh wow, he's doing a podcast, man, I wish I was doing a podcast. And I always want to tell people, the persona of, oh wow, it looks like he's killing it, he's going, he's a comedian. I'm telling you, like, I'm not killing it. Like, I'm just in the same boat as everyone else. I'm trying to figure it out still. Like, I thought by now I would have figured it out, and I'm still trying to figure out how to not be comparing myself to other people. Not, I mean, I compare myself to people all the time, and it's such a terrible habit, and it's like, it's just, it's such a habit that's so detrimental to your spirit and to who you are. And I see it too with young people, man. I see, I've had to have those conversations with, my own kids, where I'm like, stop, like that's one thing. Like, me and my son, we have those conversations. Like, he's way more aware of it than I am. He'll say to me, Dad, stop scrolling, like, and I'm like, you're right. Or he was he'll be like, you got to get this app, it'll get you, you'll be off your phone, and stuff like that. And we're always talking to each other, hey, how much time were you off today? Or, yeah, I've been off for 3 days. So he's more
Whoa.
aware of it than I am. So it's kind of cool to share those type of conversations with him, which makes me realize those kids are so, it's like smoking, man. I mean, it's like when I was growing up, everyone smoked, and then everyone died, and there was a moment where it was like, smoking's okay. Doctors used to smoke, and now scrolling has replaced smoking. It's like, go outside, I need to scroll. It used to be, I used to smoke. You go in the bathroom, I need to scroll. After people have sex, it used to be light up a cigarette. Now it's hand me my phone. It's taken over our lives. So for me, I think with meditation and all that, I used to think I need to meditate because everyone else is meditating. I need to quiet my mind because everyone else is quieting my mind now, or quieting their mind. Now I I just try to do the best I can, because I realize I'm I'm just not that good at it. Like, and I just don't know if I'm kind of at the point, and I'm not saying that I've given up, but it's the equivalent of, like, if you handed me a trumpet, and I would just have to say, Michael, you know what, man, I've really given this a shot, and I don't think I'm going to be able to play it. Like, and then if you said, don't worry about ever playing a song, but if you can get a note out here and there, then you know what, Joe, just keep doing it. And that's where I'm at. If I can have a moment where I do meditate, or if I can have a day where, starting my day, I always like starting my day off with, not the phone, not just
Smart.
dropping into some journaling, dropping in, reading, I read this Jesus Calling every day. And it's just like, it's just a passage where it's just like, okay, here's the deal. And it's short, and I can get my head around it. Okay. Starting it out with that. Like, I feel like when you start your day out like that, there's some days you start your day out, I feel like some days, even, it's the same. It's the analogy I would use is food. You wake up in the morning and you eat bacon, eggs, and you have a donut. Chances are at lunch, you're going to go, you know what? I'm going to have a burger. I'm going to have some fries. Chances are at dinner, you know what? I'm going to have a cocktail. I'm going to have a steak. Boom. You kind of follow that. Whereas I feel like if I start my day out without social media, without the phone, without that, and get some good words in front of my eyes, get some good messages in my head, and also do some time to myself with journaling and stuff like that. For me personally, I tend to have a better day. Now, right now, do I do that every day? No. Should I? Absolutely. I try my best to do it. And when I do it, it's better.
I think that I learned about this, the shoulds disease. I should be doing this. I
Yeah.
should be doing that. But I don't think that's like helpful, because then we've got like guilt and shame around it. Like, you do what you can, and you're you'll build that muscle.
All I know is this. The one thing I'll say, the thing I'll say is this. I remember I had this friend of mine. He was a workout guy. He's always working out and he was in great shape. And, there's a part of me that I was like, man, I want to be like that. And he said to me once, he goes, Joe, it doesn't matter, but what does matter is every day, just make one small effort. And I feel that that's true. Like one small effort could be, yeah, I walked 10,000 steps. One small effort. Yeah, I went for a surf. One small effort. Yeah, after this, I'll go for a walk. And I feel it's the same with what we were just talking about with whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whether it's any of those things. It's just like, I'm never ever going to be chill. I'm you know what I'm saying? I'm staring at 60 years old and I haven't chilled out yet. And I don't think it's in my cards. And what I don't want to do is make myself feel bad because I try, but I'm not. It's just like even with eating food. Yeah. Do I eat healthy? Yeah. Could I eat healthier? Yes. Am I in shape? Yes. Could I be in better shape? Yes. But I don't want to beat myself up about it because just what you just said is so true. And then throw in social media. You're always feeling like you're not doing enough.
You're very wise, and I meditate a lot. And I think you've figured out your meditation. There's so many different ways to meditate. Like the way that you start your day is brilliant. It sets you up, not only for that day, but it sets you up for future days, as you're alluding to, not being on the phone. Journaling is brilliant. That's something that
I love journaling.
So
love it.
Smart. And then you're finding words that are in alignment or something that inspires you. That's your meditation. So
there you go.
I think you figured out.
I also felt out like I also felt out that like, you can tell how your body feels. And I know this for a fact. Before I go on stage, I feel one way. When I get done, I feel another way. And that other way is heart rate's down. I've spoken about what I needed to talk about. I've gotten the validation from the audience. I came up with an idea. I said it. And at the end of the day, I really do believe that the gift, when we're born, I thought about this, it was really a mind changer for me. When a baby's born, what does a baby do? A baby, it cries, it sleeps, and you need someone to take care of it, right? But even as an infant, there's another emotion. It laughs. So like, when you get your computer, when you get your phone, it says like, there's a button on there, later on when you're like, oh God, I got to fix it. Return to original settings. If we look at ourselves as human beings, our original settings from the moment we get squirted out from our mom is crying, laughing, sleeping, but laughing is in there. It's just in you. You ever seen a little baby laugh and you're like, oh my God, they can't even see yet. And they're laughing. So for me, getting the opportunity to say words to people that I've never met, and we share this primal, like when there was cavemen, they had to have been laughing. The one guy that wasn't good at getting the dinosaur, he tripped over the rock and everyone laughed. And then he was like, all right, I'll be that guy. Like I can't start a fire, but I'm going to be the guy that makes everyone in the cave laugh. There had to have been a guy that drew something on one of those walls and everyone laughed. And to me, making people laugh, it cannot get more primal and more just back to the core of who we are. Like laughter has been there the whole frigging time.
The connection, that is amazing. What you just said is very profound. The connection of laughter. There's no better feeling. Also in a shared environment when you're all laughing together, it does something to your spirit. It is just beautiful.
And it's been going on since the beginning of time. Like if someone when you hear a room laugh, it sounded like that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, it sounded the same. So it's almost like you're in a weird time machine. Like next time you're in a room with people laughing, you can put your head down and you can go, is this the same laughter I would have heard in 1914? Is this the same laughter I would have heard in the 1800s? Yes, it's laughter. It's never stopped being laughter. It's not like people think about all the changes in life that you have, the way we dress, our haircuts, even the sizes of our bodies. You look at those old photos, you're like, oh my God, everyone was so small, but they were still laughing, and you listen, and you can even listen to old comedy records from the 50s, the 60s, or even those old television shows that are in black and white. The laughter is the same.
I've never noticed that. That's amazing. And this springs to mind. I heard you in another interview, you talk about like play and fun. And obviously that's been a key theme in your life. And not always would you be able to, incorporate it. But it sounds like, well, you said play doesn't stop because you become an adult. And I think that's really profound because, we're told, I know, I used to be an accountant. Most people, especially like my upbringing, it was like, there's no such thing as play and fun. You just do that. You make a living. So I'd love to know why that's been so important for you, the play and fun aspect.
Because we're gonna be at the end, at the end, when we take our final breath. You're not gonna when you're gone and I'm gone, the people that are going to be talking about us, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's our friends, whether it's our kids, do you want them to say, oh yeah, like, tell me about your dad, tell me about him? Well, he was always on time, and he always paid played the mortgage on time, and and I'll say this, he never missed a day at work, and all of that. Okay. And yeah, those are great characteristics. I'm not going to say working hard is because I love working. Like, work to me, I love working. When I wake up in the morning, my I love getting up, get a coffee, and just starting the day of like, what am I going to be doing today? I love to work. But if you're not having fun in life, then why are we even here? Like, it's not worth it. It's not, because you're going to be dead a lot longer than you've been alive, and it goes fast. Like, the average expectancy of every male, is roughly 74 years. So, if you do the math on that, it's not a lot of time that you're going to be on this planet, and if you start doing, the time about that, like, you're like, okay, I'm 50 years old, and if I'm going to pass, if I'm going to be out of here at 74, okay, I got roughly 24 summers. What? Yeah, only 24 summers that you have left. And that, to me, when you start thinking about that, I think that's where people start putting into perspective what is really important and what's not important. I mean, think about it. Roughly, if from the moment you're born, you roughly have, what, I don't know, 30,000 days. Think about that. 30,000 days. When you really think about it, 30,000 days, you're like, wait a minute. So my life is only 30,000 days. Yeah. Wait a minute. I thought it was 100,000. Well, yeah. If you live to be 140, no. If you live to be 74, you're roughly looking at 30,000 days. And what's important to me, and I do it and everyone does it, is that if you don't try to have fun, and I don't mean fun like silly, go get drunk and, hang out with your mates. I'm saying like fun, because you can have fun while you work. You can have fun. You can make life, I tell people that all the time. Is, and I'm notorious for sometimes taking it too serious. And I've just learned over my life, like, it isn't worth it if you're not having fun. Like, I don't want to do stand up if I'm not having fun. The moment that I go up, the moment I, stop having fun, I don't want to do it, and I would say I've made that decision, like when I was a musician, there was a moment where I wasn't having fun anymore. I wasn't having fun. And I remember I don't want to do it anymore. And it wasn't because I don't love music. It was just, I'd been doing it. I started at 15. I was now 35. And I was like, I'm done. I don't want to, that's a long time that I've been playing music. And then I got more interested in being behind the scenes and, signing bands and managing bands. That's what got me excited. And then ultimately, to get back on stage, it was stand up. And then that's been the last, 17, 18 years.
Can you tell me about this? Because this is really interesting. You had a lot of success as a musician with many different bands, and we'll talk about that as well. But when you've been doing something for so long and you've built great relationships, a lot of people, the industry, there's almost, and I don't like this word, but the cost of reinvention. We have to start again.
Totally. Totally. When I reinvented myself, it's a total reinvention for me, 100%, 100%. And the thing when I reinvented my when I it's a reinvention 100%. I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't like, I'm going to reinvent myself. I didn't say that. But when I decided to do stand-up comedy, and I would also say it came with a cost, because I think a lot of my musician friends got really turned off by it. They were like, almost like, it's weird. I don't know. I don't
It's
like,
sometimes leaving the community, it's a judgment on them. People
it
can
is.
take it internally, but it's not.
I would say that, like, I mean, what I would say is, I mean, I never was, I've been, because I've had so much support from the music community when I started, just so many friends in bigger bands that were like, you got to open for us. Brian Fallon from Gaslight Anthem, he was like one of the first people to be like, you have to open for us as a comedian. Jay Bentley from Bad Religion, you have to open for our band. Like, so there's been so much support that way. But some of my friends just kind of looked at me a little bit like, really, you're not going to play music anymore? And I was like, no, I want to just do stand up. And also, the thing about telling people that you do stand up, and I understand this. I understand this. When you tell someone, and especially like when I started, 17, 18 years ago, there wasn't as many comedians as we have today. So today there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of quote unquote comedians. And then there's the people that are like, I'm on YouTube, or I do TikTok videos. And then there's, the improv and all of that. So now there's just you can't throw a baseball, out your front door without hitting a comedian. But when I started, there that hadn't happened yet. It was on the verge. It was on the verge. But when you told someone you were a comedian, and even now when you tell someone you're a comedian, and George Carlin said this, he said, by saying I'm a comedian, you're saying I'm the guy. I'm the funniest person. And when you stand on stage and you're in front of a crowd and they go, all right, ladies and gentlemen, bring up this next comedian, what that comedian is saying is, I think I'm the funniest person in this room. That's the statement you're making. And anyone that says, oh no, that's not true, well, then they're lying to themselves. Because if you're really getting on stage and you're like, yeah, I'm really not that funny, I guess I'll try it, then that I don't think that exists. The ego, and also to go up there and say to 100 strangers, I'm the funniest person. When you first start, you're not. And you know what? The only reason you go on stage is because of one reason only. You're delusional. That's the only reason you do it. You're so delusional that you've told yourself, and you've made yourself believe that you are that funny. You're delusional. And the delusion gets you on stage. It gets you on stage because you're like, you know what? I think I can pull this off. And and you get one laugh, and in your head, you go, wow, that worked. And it feeds it feeds the delusion. Like when all those people say, oh God, you got to have balls to get on stage. No, my balls are normal. They're not even, they're nothing special about them. But I have been delusional my whole life. I wanted to open up for the Ramones. I used to say, I'm going to open for the Ramones. I did. I was so delusional that I got to meet my heroes. As a comedian, I've had opportunities, whether it's opening on the same show as Dave Chappelle, or being on a show with Bill Burr, getting to tour with, comedian Jim Bruer,
Yeah.
like all of those things. The only reason was because in the beginning I was delusional. Not crazy. It's delusional. I think this can happen. And everybody that starts out, you have to hold on to being delusional like that. Like I'm going over to Edinburgh. I'm going to Edinburgh to do that festival, right? And I went last year, and I'm going again this year. And the only way that you say, hey, I'm going to go to Scotland, or I'm going to go and do this, is because you have to hold on to being delusional so that you actually can talk yourself into it. And it has to be the same. I mean, I've never jumped out of an airplane with a parachute on, but I would bet those guys say the same thing to each other. Like, yeah, you know what? We have to be a little crazy, and we have to be a little delusional to think that little parachute in the back is going to actually save our lives,
Yeah. Where does this Belief. I'm hearing belief. Is it because you've done so much stuff? You always know?
Absolutely.
Do you feel it inside? Like, how do you explain?
I mean, I think that's the great thing about growing growing older and being around, and I'm not one of those people, you know, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have this belief or these feelings unless I could back it up. And I have 49 years to back it up. It's like I can tell you, since I was 10 years old, being on stage and getting to do the things that I've done, is that being delusional. And when I say delusional, I don't mean cocky, I don't mean arrogant, I don't mean that. I mean believing in yourself so much and believing that you are just a little bit more, and you're special, and that you deserve to be up there, and you're going to take that microphone and you're going to make everyone laugh. And even when it doesn't go well, you're riding home in that car, and instead of you're going, oh my God, being realistic, being, hey, that was not good, you put yourself in danger, never do that again. That's what a sane person does. But when you're someone like myself, when you're any of these people that we love, you're not normal. And the key ingredient to starting it, I'm not saying you're delusional, like when you're like the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, I don't think he's gone on stage being delusional, but there was a moment in his life when he was a drummer living in DC, and he was like, I'm going to write a letter to Ian from Minor Threat and ask him if there's any bands I could be in. That's being delusional. That's being like, what are you talking about? You're gonna write a letter to some guy, and yeah, and okay, I'm gonna do it. And we've all seen the letter. He actually sent it, and that's being delusional. That's being like, I think I can pull it. I think I can do it. Not being like, yeah, I mean, I'll never be good enough. And I mean, let's face it, I'm really not that good. Because at the beginning, you're not good. You have to be delusional to keep doing it.
What I love about this is then you have the belief to then try comedy, which is, there obviously overlaps with, performing on stage, but that belief to get up on stage when you haven't done it before. And on top of that, they say like to be a good comedian, it takes like 7 or 10 years or whatever the number is. So obviously when you're starting, yes, you're getting the laughs, but shows are probably not going great all the time. What was it, that belief that kept you going forward? That was like, I didn't make a silly mistake. This is actually where I need to be.
I think for me, the thing that kept me going, was the love of stand up. I got addicted to it. I've never done drugs. I drink some beers here and there. I was never like smoke weed guy. I just never got into drugs. And what I realized with stand up was I 100% am addicted to chasing a laugh. When you make a group of people, whether it's 20 people or whether it's 1,500, laugh, and I'm not talking like, oh yeah, they kind of just chuckled. I'm saying like, when you hear back a room full of people laughing, and when you see people grabbing each other and hitting each other, or because they're laughing so hard, or they're hunched over, that sound and that feeling, for me personally, 100% has become an addiction of me wanting to chase that. And when I say chase that, I mean I want to put words together in an order that'll get more people to do that. I will come up with, I'll be like, man, I want to go over that idea that I had, and I want to trim the fat on it, because I want people to laugh harder. I will study it like a painting. I will study it like a mathematical equation. I'll look back at words, I'll look back at phrases, I'll take some out, I'll put some in, I'll shorten this, I'll tighten that up, because I want the laugh to even be bigger. And then what I'll do is I'll do that on a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, a Friday night, and a Saturday night. And then I'll be on Sunday looking for somewhere where I can go and try something again. Because what ends up happening is you start craving, it's a weird um thing with like, it's almost like I've never been a person that's like a computer programmer, but it's putting together a code and
Yeah.
seeing the code work. And for me personally, I'm chasing that. And the reason I know I'm chasing it is because I will go do a show at a theater in front of 2,500 people and be in that environment. And the very next day, I will go do a show at a coffee shop in front of 15 people because I need and want to take those words and that code and manipulate it more to get a laugh. And I like hearing the laugh. And I tell comics all the time, if you are in this business, if you're in the business of doing comedy because you want to be famous, you want to make money, it's not gonna happen. It's like, I mean, and when I say that, I don't mean negative, like it's never gonna happen. But what the chances are, you're gonna have to make money if you want doing something that includes comedy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like whether it's like, hey, I wanted, I want to be a famous comedian and I want to sell out the huge tickets. Okay. Hey, all of us are trying to do that. But what you're doing when you're doing it is you're also figuring out what are other things that involve comedy and these tools that I could be doing and I could still be putting money on the table, because that right there, that's the difference. Like if you're like, there's a lot of comics I know that are hilarious and they want to be huge and they want to be popular, but that right there to me is, you got to be delusional to do that, but you also have to be aware of, hey, while I'm doing this, I got to keep all my ideas and options open, because maybe I'm a writer, maybe I'm a person that's better at improv, maybe I'm a person that's better at directing, maybe I'm a person that's better at writing and shooting. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? And like that, I'm not saying you're never going to make money doing comedy. Like, look at me as a musician. I wanted to be, oh my God, I wanted to be Joe Strummer from The Clash. I thought our band was going to be Pearl Jam. We weren't. We didn't have any of that. But during the course I was doing that, I realized, you know what I do have? I have a good eye for talent. I have a good eye. I have a great ear for songs. Oh my God, I can pick a single from day one. Still to this day, I can pick a single. Send me your record, I'll tell you the song that's the single. And that was something that I realized, oh, I can still be doing what I love, music, but I can be doing it this way. With stand-up comedy, it's the same thing. I've been doing stand-up for as long as I have. And then people, with my storytelling, people love the stories. Hey man, I love your stories. Tell a story. Also, because I work clean, I don't, I'm a clean comedian, and I made a decision to be a clean comedian because I'm able to do shows that other comedians that are probably way funnier than me, but they swear and they're dirty, they don't get to do that show. And what I do is I do that show and I leave with the check, because those people want that style of comedy. They want a clean comic, not a little kid comic, but they want a comic that they can bring their kids. They want a comic that can bring their mom and dad. They don't want to go there and get barat. And I'll tell you right now, I love a dirty comic. Some of my, whether Red Fox, Richard Pryor, so many of these comics that just go for it. But you know what? There's a lot of people that want a Nate Bargatze. They want clean. And you know what? I learned along some of the early advice I got was, hey man, love your energy, love your vibe. You need to write some jokes. And you know what? If you work clean, I think you'll get more opportunities than you would if you're not. And when I started late. I was like, you know what? I can work clean. And I just started working clean. And that was my decision to do that. That was the reason why I got the Jim Bruer tour. I worked with Jim Bruer for 10 years because I was clean.
And also, we'll pigeonhole that because that's a crazy story in itself. But that also, I assume, led you to the Dry Bar comedy special, because they're all about.
There you go.
And I know
was
that
clean.
and I know that from the other side of the world, because they're known as the clean. They're
amazing. The clean company. And the reason I got asked to be a part of Dry Bar was because I was clean, and I was out in Salt Lake City, and I did an audition in front of the owner, and he was like, okay, let's do it. And the next thing I know, I got to do it. And if I wasn't clean, I wouldn't have gotten to do that.
That's amazing.
But once again, none of those things that we just talked about, the dry bar special, the 800-pound gorilla special, getting the chance to tour with a comedian, like Bruer, all of those things. None of them would have happened if I wouldn't have been as delusional as I was when I started. So I've been
What
delusional since I was 10. I want to be a magician. I want to be in a band. I want to, and it's, it, I have to stress, it's not being like crazy, because some people think delusional. Oh, no, it's just being, it's you're doing something that no one else is doing, and you have to believe in yourself so much that even when you fail miserably, you still believe in yourself.
I love that. And adding to what you said before, like there are other ways to cultivate your passion as well. Like as a comedian, you might write for others, you might do improv
Yeah,
shows, you might, and I think that's amazing because you often were like, this is the thing I want to do. I have to do this.
yeah.
But if you're in that area, it could still be the same thing. Like I know people that wanted to be screenwriters and they do producing and there's screenwriting elements of producing, and that's still got that craft. It's just it's changed, it's evolved. We evolve as humans.
And a lot of times, everyone that starts out, they have a moment where you have what you want to be. You have your dream, you have all those things. But I really believe that, what's the alternative? Are you going to quit? Like, whether you're like, let's say you're an athlete and you're like, I want to play football for, one of these big teams. I want to be a part of, Manchester United. So all your life you're just playing, football, and you're doing it and doing it, and you get pretty far, and let's say you get to the lower leagues. I don't know enough about,
Yeah,
football
I
or
got you.
soccer, but you're going and you're going, and then what ends up happening? You don't make the team. You don't get picked. So you're going to spend all that time, and then, but you, along the way, you met coaches. Along the way, you helped a friend get over an injury. Along the way, you started realizing that they should be selling different concessions. I don't know what it is, but along the way you realize, hey, you know what? I can still be at the party. I might not have that jersey on, but I can still be there and finish across the finish line. But it might not be as a player. It might be as a coach. It might be as a sports trainer. It might be as a doctor. But at the end of the day, you're still on the team.
I
And for
love
me, that's the thing I think so many people forget about. And I'm living proof of that. Living proof.
You are. And I think this is such a good story. We've spoken about this a little bit, but with Jim Brewer. And this to me, this summarizes everything that we've spoken about. I believe, and please fill in the gaps. You were messaging the publicist that you'd love to open for Jim Brewer. And then they're like, stay in touch, stay in touch.
Yep.
And you kept on doing it. And then you were like, you looked at his tour dates. You're like, oh, I'm going to be in Chicago, but you weren't actually going to be in Chicago.
No.
Still kept it going because you had that. You knew that this was for you, and then eventually they contacted you, and the rest is history. Can you tell me about this opportunity? And then we'll lead into Metallica because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right there. Seriously. I mean, that was the way it went down. I met Jim through a friend, and I met him, and I was introduced to his publicist, really, really cool woman. And she's, Jim kind of was, say, hey, nice to meet you. I said, I'm a comedian. Oh, okay, great. I said, man, if there was ever the opportunity to open for you, I'd love to. I work clean. Okay, cool. And that was it. And he went his way and I went mine. But I stayed in touch with his publicist, and because I stayed in touch with the publicist, and every once in a while I would, send an email, and I would always look at his tour dates. And at one point he was going to be in Chicago, and I just said, I'll be there too. And then I kind of reconnected with the publicist, and what ended up happening was he was coming to San Diego. And at the time I was in Los Angeles. San Diego and LA are like 2 hours apart, 3 hours apart. And I got a call from the publicist and said, hey, we just had the opening act. Jim has a falling out, like a fallout, like that he can't make it. And there was an opener that couldn't make it. And I remember you said you work clean. Can you get to San Diego tonight to open for Jim? And I said, absolutely. And I remember at the
Wow.
time my dad was living in San Diego. My dad had just moved to Little Italy in San Diego. So I called my dad and I go, Dad, I'm coming down to San Diego tonight. Would you want to come with me? Because I'm opening for Jim Brewer. And my dad said, sure, I'd love to. And I go by, I pick my dad up, and then we go over to the venue, big venue in San Diego. And at this point, I'd never really met Jim except for the brief handshake that we had when I met him originally.
Yeah.
So now I'm backstage and I'm kind of waiting. And I was in one dressing room and then Jim was in another. And I said to my dad, "Hey, I'll be right back. I got to go to the front to do something with like the guest list." And when I came back, I couldn't find my dad and I heard him and I could hear him. I'm like, "Oh my God." And he was in Jim's dressing room. So now, and as you can imagine, you're like, "Oh my God, what's my dad going to be?" So I walk into the dressing room and there's Jim Bruer and my dad. At this point, my dad has made a sandwich out of Jim's catering. He
Oh
has a
my
cup of coffee.
God.
Yeah, he has a cup of coffee in one hand, and Jim and him are just talking away. And I remember the first thing Jim said to me, "Hey, how's it going, Joe? I just met your dad." And I said, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And he goes, "Oh," and they started talking and they hit it off. And then that night, after the show, uh, you know, Jim said to me, "Hey, I'm going to be doing some shows later on in the month. If you'd like, I'd love to have you on them." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Absolutely." And
Nice.
that really became the relationship. And Jim always said that he said, as long as this guy doesn't, get booed, the fact that he would bring his dad to the show, uh,
Oh,
was kind of just something that he was like, "You know what, this guy's got to be all right." Like I wasn't back there with like, random people or just, I had my dad. It was just me and my dad. And it was one of those moments. And because, I worked clean and I did fairly well that night, that really began the relationship of getting a chance to, ride shotgun and tour with Jim for as many years as I did. It was amazing.
that is so cool. And
I learned so much.
I love the chutzpah of you keep on contacting the publicist. You
Oh
also
yeah.
meeting Jim Brewer and being like, "Hey, I would love to open for you." Like,
Yeah.
people don't do that because you obviously
No.
yeah, I love that. And then moving a little bit forward, he then says, "Can you DJ?" And you say, "Yes, I can
Well,
DJ."
yeah, what ends up happening is we're on the road forever. And we go on the road and we become really good friends. And then it was just such a great run that we had. And he was super tight with the folks in Metallica. He's really good friends with Lars. He's really good friends with James from Metallica. And he would talk to those guys regularly, which for me was always so strange because growing up in the Bay Area, Metallica was they were just the band. Like you could be a punk rocker, you could be a metaler, but everyone loved Metallica.
Yeah.
So when he was talking to them, it was so surreal for me because I was like, "Oh my gosh." And he gets a call and they were going to do a tour of arenas. It was right before the pandemic and they were doing a tour of all these arenas and they decided not to bring a band and they were going to bring Jim. And I remember he said to me, "Hey man, what do you think?" And at the time it sounded like it wouldn't work, but I was like, wow. And then a couple weeks go by, they announced the tour. And then Jim says to me, "Hey, they said I could bring someone, would you like to go?" And of course I was like, "Absolutely, man. I'm your guy." And he goes, "Yeah, do you know how to DJ?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm DJing all the time." And I had never DJ'd in my life. I literally Googled how to DJ. And I ended up being on that tour for 6 months. And it
Whoa.
was, Jim and I put together a show and it was just him and I and Metallica for 6 months and 36 shows. And it was one of the most surreal and just craziest times of my life because traveling with that band is like traveling with the president. It's just everything is just amazing. The tour buses, the catering. I mean, they treated us so well. I always like to say to people, like, if you're a fan of Metallica, because a lot of times you're a fan of a band, and as they, grow, maybe you grow apart from them. Um, I would say if you're a fan of Metallica, you bet on the right band because those guys
Cool.
are the same guys on stage as they are off. I always like to say the only difference between James Hetfield, off stage is he wears a cowboy hat and he smokes a cigar. On stage, he doesn't wear the cowboy hat and he doesn't have the cigar and he has a black t-shirt. Like that's the only difference I noticed with that. And they were so great and trusting of Jim and the show that we put together, and it was great, man. It was always one of those kind of things that it was such a life changing experience.
Oh, it sounds unbelievable. And also
Yeah, it was amazing.
credit to you. And this is really interesting as well, in that I believe because this has never really been done, having stand-up comedians open for a band, especially like Metallica. But I believe the show went really badly the first time. And
Yeah,
I'd love to know like how you picked yourself up, how you decided to fix the show. Because that you could be like, I'm
yeah.
done. I can't do
Oh,
this.
I
This is
was
too hard.
done. I was out of there. Oh my God, it went so bad. And I have to give credit 100% to Jim, because Jim, he he just was. I remember I came down the next morning and I was just devastated because everything that we tried to do didn't work, and we in the plan that we had, we didn't know how much, originally they told us we had this amount of time, we ended up having this amount of time. So there was a real moment where I said to him, I said, man, I just want you to know, like, whatever it was that we did last night, I can't do that again. It'll take years off of my life. Like, I still say to this day that when I die, whenever it is that I die, when this, my expiration date comes up, I would be alive at least one more week longer if I hadn't have been on that show in Madison, Wisconsin, because it was brutal. But what I always will say, man, is that I, Jim said to me, the exact words that he said to me was, "Let's fix it. That's why you're here." He said, "Joe, you're a music guy. Let's fix it." And right then I sat down and we retooled the whole entire show. And it ended up being from the fans' point of view. At the beginning it wasn't good, but by the end, the diehard fans that are on the rail, I still have it to this day. They like gave us a book, and they
Oh,
wrote, took photos and just signed all these amazing um, stories, and shared so many of the experiences with us. And that was just so great to go from where we started. But it was all about, the two things I always remember was, the best part about it was, there was a lot of trust, with what I wanted to do and what Jim wanted to do, and we trusted each other to be like, look, man, because sometimes when you're working with someone, you might make a suggestion, their feelings get hurt, or someone might,
yeah.
and it was like, look, man, we have one day to fix this stuff, and like, this is what I think we should do. And he was like, let's do it. And then the other thing that is so important to share was Metallica never one time got involved with what we were doing. They
Whoa.
never, as anything that we did, anything we were doing, they never ever, they trusted Bruer 100%. Even after that first night, they were like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. And it was like, really? You think so? And I remember they just gave him 100% hands off. And that was the reason why we figured it out. And one piece of advice Lars gave to Jim, and it was something that, like, we were like, wow, you know what? That's a great piece of advice. Lars said to Jim at one point, "Hey, check it out. You know what type of show, our fans, because," and Jim's a diehard fan. "Jim, you're a fan. Tell them the stories. Tell them about us bringing you on the road before. Tell them about you hanging out with James. Tell the story about Brian Johnson, ACD. Like, it doesn't have to be, anything more than that." And at that moment, it was Jim figured it out. And it went from, this experience that could have been so negative to so positive. And we figured it out. And
That's
we also
amazing.
figured out, we were out there for 2.5 hours each night. We knew how to, like, come in, go out. We didn't, we weren't overbearing on everybody. And yeah, it was definitely an experience that I'll never forget. And I was so grateful to be a part of it.
I've got two questions on this, but
Sure.
I'll just ask this one. Did you learn how to DJ at the end?
Well, you know what I ended up doing was, to answer your question, yes, I did learn how to DJ, but I ended up basically coming up. I had a whole DJ setup, and what I ended up doing on my computer, and I forgot the program at the time. There was like this digital program where I was like, I just uploaded all the songs that I knew I was going to play. Instead of being out there on the stage, they had me on the stage the first night. I was like, I do not want to be on the stage, because it was just me up there in front of all these people. I said, put me on the floor with the fans. And also, I had the fans making making requests. So from the moment that we started, the fans could text requests and we were playing requests. And then what it really turned into, Michael, was it was as if two friends got asked to throw a party and they invited 20,000 people, and 20,000 people showed up, and they showed up to the party that we threw. And just by chance, one of the guys that threw the party happened to know the guys in Metallica, and that was the band.
That's
And
amazing.
it was a party.
Yeah.
It was a party. It was a concert, but leading up to when Metallica went on stage, we threw a party because Jim brought in the audience, Jim brought in the fans, Jim, we did so much interaction with the audience, but not silly, like good stuff. Then we played music. There was times where I was just DJing. I'd be playing everything from an Anthrax tune to a Sex Pistols tune, back to a Dropkick Murphys tune, back into, a prong song. Like it would just, and people were losing their minds. And that was what made it have this party atmosphere.
I love that you guys rose to the occasion, especially after going through what sounds like one of the
Oh.
worst days. Brilliant. And what about the irony aspect? You were a musician. You probably dreamed of like opening for Metallica, and then you do it
My
as
whole
a
life.
comedian.
My whole life, if you would have told me when I went to the Injustice for All tour, I saw Metallica at the Cow Palace in the Bay Area. Cow Palace, a legendary venue. I saw AC/DC there. I saw Metallica there. I think 2 nights. I saw Metallica at the Shoreline. I mean, like and when I was in my band, if you would have said to me when I was 22, 23 years old, hey, you're going to go on tour with Metallica, but not in your band, but as a comedian / DJ, I would have never, ever have believed you. And once again, when Jim asked me to go and said, hey man, you'll help me do the show. Plus, can you DJ? I'm sure there's a lot of comedians that would have been like, well, if it's not about me, then I don't want to go. And that was back to what we said, 20 minutes ago, keeping your eyes open to everything, because not only did I get to be a part of it, but sure, I DJ'd, but I also did my bits on there. Jim carried the show. I mean, it was his thing. I was, I definitely, he had that crowd in the palm of his hand every night for 30, 40 minutes. And it was amazing. But I was super, super grateful that I said yes, and that I was able to see how great of a time I would have and just the opportunity.
That is amazing. You've lived a crazy life. And you're also going to Edinburgh. I think it's currently out so people could check it out. What has brought you to Edinburgh? I know you went there the year before.
Yeah, I went the year before. And, I talked to a lot of comedians, and they all didn't like it. All the comedian friends I talked to didn't like it. They hated it. Yeah. Every comic, with the exception of Bruer, told me not to go. Jim was the only one that told me to go. He was the only one. He goes, you're going to love it. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, you're going to love it. And you're going to come back a whole different comedian. And I was like, really? Because all the other comedians that I knew that went, they didn't like the experience. And I understand now why they didn't, because when you go to Edinburgh, first of all, you're in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, but it's also cobblestone and everything's a million years old. And I could see how that might not be like for me. I absolutely love it, but maybe people would get depressed. I don't know. I could also see what they don't like is there's no guaranteed audience. You're in a room that holds 50 people, and sure, you might have some pre-sale tickets. And if you're a big deal, yeah, you'll sell some tickets. But if you're a comedian from America going over there for the first or second time, no one cares. No one. Yeah. And if you don't go out and make an effort, flyering, meeting people, going to other shows, doing spots on other shows, like it's a young man's game. It's a young person's game. That's the other thing too. Like, I mean, people that like I talked to were in their like 30s and 40s, and they're like, I'll never go again. And I was like, really? And they're like, oh my God, every morning you have to get up, you have to go, and you have to flyer, and then you have to do your show. They were like, you have to do your show every day. And like, all the stuff I love about it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
First of all, I don't like flyering. I don't like going around telling, hey man, you want to come to my show? But what I realized it was 2 hours of crowd work I did every day. And it made that muscle. I was like, oh, I'll just turn this into a 2 hour show. And I'd go around, I'd meet people and I'd make a joke with them and I'd get them to come to the show. Um, and then you go on stage, and every day you're on stage for 27 days, 28 days, and there's only one or two things that are going to happen. You're either going to get better, and all the like. In my opinion, you go over there with a bunch of tools. You have all your tools. Like, you ever seen a sushi chef? They open up their thing and they're like, they got all their knives and everything. And like, in my opinion, as a comedian, you go over with all of your tools. And while you're there for the 28 days, you're sharpening them there. And some of the tools you're getting rid of, you're getting other tools, you're putting them in. And by the time you leave, you are no longer, if you do your job right, if you 100% drop into it, if you, sure. I know a lot of guys, a lot of people, they go over there and they fall into the pattern of no one's coming to my show, so I'm going to be negative. And like, when I say no one, like, if you're not comfortable with doing an hour of stand up in front of 7 people, don't go. Like, like, I just did a show the other night, I sold out this small venue, right? It was great. I just came off of doing shows in North South Carolina, 200 people. I did 2 nights, same venue, 600 people each night.
Whoa.
It was amazing. Like, oh my God. Or, like like the most people. And I did 2 shows. Oh my God, that's great. Now I'm going to Edinburgh, and you know what a good night's going to be? 10. If I walk out and they go, dude, pre-sale 10, you're like, yes. Dude, 7. Yes. Okay, there's 2. Okay, 2 people. I remember one night there was 1 person. And it's like, that's where I'm saying, like, if you, like, some people listening right now are, because they're doing the math and they're like, why would you do that? I'll tell you why. Because I want to be better. I want to get in front of 1 person for an hour. And you know what? I want to sweat my fucking balls off. I want to be working to make this 1 person enjoy themselves. And I also want to do it in a way that when they leave, it wasn't weird for them. And sure, it was weird for me, but I don't want them to be like, well, this guy's a lunatic. But my point being is, and hey, don't get me wrong, I don't want to do shows to 1 person. But what I'm saying is, the reason you go there is to figure out every single night. It really goes back to magic. You show up every single night and you're putting a straitjacket on. And for 1 hour, you have to figure out how to get out of that straitjacket. And that straitjacket is 7 people. Fuck, that sucks. That straitjacket sometimes a little loose. There's 20 people tonight. Okay, cool. I can get out of it a little quicker. You know how hard it is to get out of the straitjacket of 4 people being there, and 2 of them are from Germany, and they thought they were going to a different show, and they actually went into the wrong show, and they're too embarrassed to get up and leave. Do you know how hard that straitjacket of awkwardness is to try to find your way out? Do you know how hard that is?
Yeah.
And if you don't, and I understand, you're not supposed to like that. And I understand right now why all my friends that went over there don't go anymore, because it's the equivalent of if you said to me, hey man, do you want to go to a rave and hang out there all night? I'd be like, please don't make me go and do that. And there's people that would be like, why? It's the greatest experience ever. But to me, it's the worst experience. I wouldn't get anything out of it, but that's the same feeling that people get going to Edinburgh. But for me and so many of the other people that are there, we love it. We love it.
A brilliant mindset. I've never heard anything quite like that. That's amazing. Very rare. Not many people, because as you said, like, if people are just chasing like fame and all of that. First of all, this leads you to longevity. This leads you to be a better comedian. This makes you really think on your feet and pull out something when there's things aren't amazing. But I also feel like you would be unbelievable at flyering. And that is a skill at Edinburgh. I feel like of anyone I've spoken to, you would be the best. And that is a great skill to have. How do you also, on top of that, how do you deal with the stress of, maybe the ticket sales or getting up early, to sell and to do all of that? Because it's tough.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a grind. Um, you know what it is? I just I just am grateful that I'm there. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I definitely keep myself mentally healthy in the sense of like, yeah, am I gonna have 4 pints every night? No. Am I gonna have 1 pint? Absolutely, maybe two. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna get plenty of sleep. I'm not gonna eat bad food. I'm gonna, work out. I'm gonna journal. I have a routine. My routine
Nice.
is, I'm gonna, get in bed. I'll get up. I'll have my coffee. I'll journal about the show from the night before, make some tweaks in it. Then I'll go out and I'll flyer, and then I'll eat something good, and then I'll do the show. And then after the show, I'll let it, I just won't think about it. Maybe think about it a little bit, give it a break. Then I'll go to some other shows. Um, but, but there's definitely a routine to it. One thing I'll say is, yeah, if you go over there and party, um, that's just not going to work. You can't go out for 28 nights in a row and drink, pints, and expect you're not going to mentally take its toll on you. And you'll feel, the other thing is too, is if you do struggle with like depression or struggle with like any of that stuff, it can hit you hard there, hard, because like you're walking down the street, you're not in America, you're not home, you're not like, oh, hey, everyone there is incredibly friendly, but it's also like it can get quiet real quick, and also, you know, um, you could find yourself comparing, why didn't I get the 5-star review? Why didn't I get invited on the 12 midnight show? Why didn't I get invited to do the spot? Why isn't everyone excited about me? And I got to go do the show in front of 3 people. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're not, dude, I'm telling you right now, the fact that people don't go, I understand more than the fact that people do go. Now,
Yep.
now if you're over there, obviously, if you're going over there and you're like, oh, and I see it, this one woman named Susan, I'm spacing on her last name, fucking brilliant. Just so oh God, I wish I gotta say her name. Let me see if I can find it. I gotta give her a shout out because I had to go on in the same room as her every single night. And every night, this was so hard. Her show sold out. Just okay. Susan Harris comedy. Susan Harris comedy. She's Susan Harris comedy. From, she had the same room as me, and I was after her every night, sold out. Like I would go in there to she would leave, and I'd have to go in there to set up for my show. Dude, it was so sweaty, and just I could feel the whole audience on me. And then I had as they all left, and just the audience of 60 people or 100, whatever it was, leave. And she'd be, oh, hi, what's up? She was so cool to me. But I was like, what's it like to have 50 people that bought tickets every night? And then I'd have to go in there to 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. And, back home, if I just stayed over here in the United States, yeah, I can do 100 people every night. Okay, great. Like, why wouldn't you just do that? But I'm telling you, the reason I don't want to just do that is because the way you leave Edinburgh as a performer, as a writer, as a comedian, you are not the same person. And if you let it, and I believe this is the last thing I'll say, if you let it and you open your heart and you open your eyes to the possibilities, there is an energy over there that it gets in you, and it's like a spiritual awakening of anything is possible.
Amazing. Can we get a snapshot of the show and what it's called? That I love that. I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time.
Tell you, the show is called Aggie. It's a comedy about moms, and the snapshot is this. I took a trip with my mom to Ireland, and she always wanted to go, and she always told me, don't forget you're half Irish. And when you look at this face, you're not like Flanagan, you're like, I'm Italian Irish. uh and she always wanted to go to Ireland, and it's a story about taking a trip with my mom, which I suggest everyone does with their parents. And in this particular trip with my mom, it didn't turn out the way that we thought it was going to turn out.
Well,
And in some ways it was better, and in some ways it was worse, but I'm glad we did it. And it's called Aggie, a comedy about moms, 2:00. Basically,
good time.
Yeah, 2:00 in the TV room. And basically the show is about how everybody that has a mother, everybody that is going through life thinking I'll never turn into my mom, ultimately there's parts of you that will always be turning into your mom. And the love of a mother is different than a love of a dad. I don't, like a mother will love, in my opinion, the good, the bad, the weird, everything. They're like, your mother knows you because they carried you. Your dad loves you and your dad cares and loves. But for me, with your dad, it's a different relationship. At a certain point, I feel with your dad, especially with men, it turns more into two mates. Like me and my dad are just two guys, we have intense conversations, but the person that knew me better than anybody is my mom. She knows me like the back of her hand. She knows me, and we can call each other out, and she can call me out. It's like being on your computer and you're like, oh my God, I need help. And Steve Jobs shows up. Let me tell you, what do you need? That's what it's like.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that take. Before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date?
Go on Instagram. Go on my Instagram, Joe_Sib. Go on my YouTube channel. If you like the stories that you've heard, there's 30 of them up there. There's stories about all the things I talked about today. Go to Joe Sib on YouTube. You can also follow me on Facebook, Joe Sib. I'm on TikTok. I'm really not on TikTok that much, but the places to find me are on my Instagram and on my Facebook.
Amazing.
And on my YouTube.
And Edinburgh ticket sales are there as well. So people
if you go to my Instagram right now, hey, if you just go to joesib.com, you can find all my stuff. Go to joesib.com. All my socials are there. You can find tickets to my show. And if you are going to Edinburgh Fringe, 2:00 in the TV, in the Nook, Gilded Balloon, amazing people. I love the people at Gilded Balloon. They have given me such a huge opportunity 2 years in a row. And I can't wait to see everyone over there.
Also, on that, before we go, your YouTube is amazing. I love the short stories and the way that you speak to the audience. That I highly recommend it. It's very easy to watch get a good feel for you as a comedian as well.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the stuff you talked to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I talked about that on one of those stories. So I love that you watched those.
I also listened to about 20 podcasts as well, but they were amazing. Awesome. You're very inspiring. You have a very unique perspective on life, and I love it. And yeah, thank you so much.
Michael, thank you so much for having me, man. And I can't wait to come back on again, man. I hope I gave you what you were looking for.
One of the things I really love about this conversation with Joe was Joe's take on primal laughter. The idea that laughter isn't something we simply learn, it's something that's already inside us. It's part of our core settings. It's something deeply human. And when you think about it, laughter is really incredible. It can change the energy in a room, break down barriers, connect us with strangers, and quite simply, make us feel better. I love that Joe reminds us that something as simple as laughing can have such a profound effect on how we experience the world and experience the people around us. We spend so much of our lives trying to improve ourselves, fix ourselves, achieve more, and become better versions of ourselves, which is fantastic. And I encourage this. But maybe sometimes the answer is much simpler. Maybe we just need a laugh to connect, to be present, to let ourselves experience that very human thing that's been inside us all along. And I think that's a pretty beautiful reminder from Joe. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Laughter is the language of the soul. Pablo Neruda. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy and life.